Welcome back to the tutorial for how to facilitate session 3 of a teen wellness circle. You have run 2 sessions now, and hopefully you're off to a great start, and you're paying attention to helping teens pay attention to their wellness, and they're beginning to get some traction. They're beginning to understand the process. Usually at this point the group is really starting to gel, both in terms of their interpersonal relationships, and they're starting to get a hang of what the process is and how these groups work. And just want to again, I'm your co-host for these trainings and the co-creator of this program, Scott Stoner, and along with me is
Holly Hughes Stoner. And just again, like last time we talked about the mindset, another mindset that we want to be thinking about is that when these young people decide for themselves what changes they want to make and they really care about it, it's authentic and meaningful to them, they have a much better chance of making the change. If we as the adults tell them what to do, as we probably all know, if we tell teens what to do, the chances of it happening are not all that great. But if they decide that they want some change to happen for themselves, it's much more likely to happen. So that is a mindset that is very different for most of us adults when working with young people. But it's an important mindset for us to have as we are running these circles.
Again, not that there isn't a time and place for adults to give advice to young people. It's not. We're not saying that is never an appropriate course of action. It is not the mindset, though, of a wellness circle. Again, as Holly said, it's a kind of a counterintuitive mindset. I think not only working with teens, but even working with adults too. We're so used to having people give us advice and give us direction. And so one of the ways we like to underscore what this mindset is all about, we like to remind people as a facilitator, you are not there to prescribe change. You don't prescribe the change. They self-prescribe. They write their own prescription for change. And another way we like to say it even stronger is that you're not there to inflict help. You're not there to inflict help, because that's the experience it has when someone tries to give us advice and become the expert on our life.
The other thing about it is we're teaching young people to think for themselves. Before you know it, they are not going to be living under their parents' roofs or in our classrooms or in our programs or whatever it is. They're going to be out in the world and they're going to be making these decisions for themselves. So this is partly a tool for which to help them, take the driver's wheel, so to say, of their life, and helping them, really be proactive about their life, rather than listening to what everybody else wants from them.
All right, so that's just a few words of an introduction, and then again a reminder about the mindset. Now we're going to turn to the skill set and how to actually teach and facilitate both the lesson and then the coaching part of what is session 3. So now we'll turn to the participant workbook, the Teen Wellness Circle participant workbook, and talk specifically about session 3. Actually, before we go to the participant workbook, we have one more slide to show you, and that's the basic session outline.
So again, just like in session 2, pretty much, you have your centering time, journaling if you choose to, if you have time. It is very valuable if you do have time to do that. The teaching segment, which this week is change is inevitable, growth is optional. And then again, we're going to be creating next steps and working with your facilitator's help, and then there will be a closing. But what we want to do right now is delve in a little bit as to what this teaching segment is. Again, you do not have to be an expert on this. You are mostly conducting a discussion. All right, so in session 3, the topic for the day of the discussion topic is that change is inevitable, growth is optional. Again, don't read this whole section. It's on page 17 in the teens book. You just want to make a summary of that and have a discussion.
And as it says in the facilitator guide on page 51, you might want to write that quote on a board or on a large piece of paper, so that the quote is right there as they come in the room. And then you could open up with a conversation about that, a discussion. If you are doing journaling, they could do some journaling about that. Ask them for examples of the truth of that statement, that change is inevitable and growth is optional, and what do they mean by that. So as we continue to teach this lesson, we have put this visual down on the bottom of page 17 that has what we call the three zones, the comfort zone, the growth zone, and the panic zone. And this is kind of a visual representation of what we're talking about when we say change is inevitable and growth is optional. And as you can see, these lessons, they really have a theme to them that supports teens in understanding how the process of change and growth works, and how, again, it doesn't just happen without our intentional effort and without our paying attention to something and causing it to grow. But this is, you might want to, you could put this up on the board, or you could just look at it in your book together. There's a couple of truths that are obvious just by looking at this. First of all, that all growth is outside of our comfort zone. All growth is by definition outside of our comfort zone. If we're doing something that's already in our comfort zone, then it's not growth, because it's already something we have learned. It is already something that is comfortable to us and something that we have internalized. So another way of saying this is that initially all growth is uncomfortable in the fact that it's outside of the comfort zone. It's something new. This would be true not just for individuals, this would be true for groups, this would be true for organizations. If a school is going to start a new schedule or a new way of laying out the day, or an organization is making a shift in how it does things, or a team or any group, same is true for groups as it is for individuals. Now, if we try to make too big of a change and try to change too fast, we may actually go right past the growth zone, and we may go into the panic zone. That's one way in which we can end up in the panic zone. The panic zone is kind of high anxiety, high stress, and we soon learn that just as we can't grow if we're in the comfort zone, we actually can't grow if we're in the panic zone either, because we're really in more of a fight-flight kind of mode. We're in a survival mode. We're literally panicking, and that's not a good time to grow. So one way we can put ourselves in the panic zone is to try to do too much, too fast. If a person signed up for a class that was way beyond their current level of comprehension because they just really want to learn something fast, it might actually end up putting them in the panic zone. Or if a person hasn't exercised in years and they say, okay, I'm going to exercise, every day this week for the next half an hour every day for the next week, it might throw them in the panic zone.
You might even have teens who live in the panic zone. They may live in an unsafe neighborhood or be having some serious problems going on at home. So it's important to remind them that there are two ways people can be in a panic zone. One way is for them to make choices that ultimately send them there, but the other is that circumstances may dictate that is what their life is like. Yeah, so as you're discussing this, you might, identify, some kids will sit in their basement and play Nintendo or Minecraft, whatever it is, day in and day out, and that's their comfort zone. To not do that and stop doing that and joining a club or joining up for a sports team or something might really be pushing them out of their comfort zone into the growth zone. Other people are in a panic zone. Maybe they're just anxious, or they might be even feeling depressed or whatever, just worried about their environments that they're in. For them, the goal would be to pull themselves into the growth zone, either from the comfort zone or from the panic zone, but to identify what they would need to do to put themselves in the growth zone.
Right. What's one thing they can do in the midst of this very real panic, stress challenge that they have? What's one thing they can do?
So as you're meeting and discussing this with the group, you might throw out some ideas.
I love this part.
Page 52 of the facilitator's guide, you can throw some things out. Like calling somebody to apologize. Raise your hand if that would put you in the panic zone, growth zone, comfort zone.
Standing up in public speaking in front of 100 people, I would ask, raise your hand. Is that a comfort zone for you? Is it a growth zone? Is it a panic zone? What's another example?
Telling your parents that you would like a different schedule. The parents are divorced and you're going back and forth, and it's not working for you anymore. It worked when you were 10, but now that you're 16, it's not working, and you want to talk to your parents. That really might be put you in the panic zone. So how can you put yourself in the growth zone for that? And ask kids, how would that be for you to do that?
Right. Another one I'd like to ask is, going on a solo camping trip out in the wilderness for 3 days. Just so many things you can talk about. Singing a song in front of a group of people. Going to a new school. Signing up for a new activity. And what it does is it normalizes that for every one of us. Some activities, some are in the comfort zone for us, some are in the growth zone, and some are in the panic zone. And we all have different ones that for different people. And so it just kind of humanizes it and normalizes it.
And that change, adolescence is basically all about change. They're changing from a kid to an adult. There's really not much of a time in life where you're having more of a dramatic change. But to grow and to make it all be a growth experience is optional. And they are the ones that can help make the difference.
And the other teaching of this that's in your book as well, it's important, is that a wellness mindset means that, again, whether it's an individual, a group, or an organization, we are regularly putting ourselves in the growth zone. We're regularly stretching ourselves. Because one of the false assumptions, and adults can do this as well as teens, is we think that we're in our comfort zone and we're just going to stay there. We're just going to keep playing video games. We're just going to keep ignoring the fact that our grades are slipping, or that there's a relationship I'm in is really not going right. I'm just going to stay in it because I don't really want to, do the hard work of growing and trying to make a change. But the false assumption is that we rarely can just stay in the comfort zone, because change is inevitable and growth is optional. And so the comfort zone will actually start getting smaller, and then we literally panic, because now a lot of our options are gone. Because now it's late in the semester and we didn't have that conversation with the teacher, or we didn't get a tutor because we were trying to just pretend that something wasn't an issue. And so the more proactive we can be about putting ourselves in the growth zone, the more options we have, and the more chances we will have of avoiding getting thrown into the panic zone.
You might even have a discussion about how being in this wellness circle might be putting them out of their comfort zone. Or maybe pulling them out of a panic zone and putting them in the growth zone. Just even talking about this with other people and working on this stuff is that they have already put themselves in the growth zone.
Exactly.
Really compliment them for being courageous that way.
And so now you've completed the teaching segment, and you know the drill by now. You know the basic session outline. Now we're going to turn to the coaching segment for session 3. So now we turn to the coaching segment. Again, time-wise, we're about halfway through now. Get in, and these are not hard and fast formulas. Sometimes teens really get into the lessons, and they really get into the conversation, in this case about the comfort zone, growth zone, and panic zone. I even had a facilitator that brought 3 pieces of rope and put 3 circles on the ground, and actually had the teens stand in the circle that when she called out different activities for them. So again, every group's going to be different. So now you turn to the coaching, and where they have a chance to both check in on the next steps that they had set in session 2. How did those go this week? How did they put themselves in the growth zone, or did they find themselves in the panic zone, or were they stuck in the comfort zone? So you want to review the coaching, the next steps from last week.
And that's on page 16 in their books. You're going to kind of, again, you just have a few minutes per participant, so you're not going to be able to go through every single thing that they've written on page 16. Now again, if they haven't completed it, give them a few minutes to finish writing there, put maybe some music on while they finish. Hopefully they will have taken care of that between sessions, but you never know. Be prepared to, give them a little time if they haven't even had a chance to do that. And then you're going to go around to each person and find out, how did it go? Were you able to make your next step? What got in the way? And then what do you want to do going forward? Maybe they did go talk to their mom about making sure that they have a bag lunch to school. Now maybe they want to move on and start, making sure that they get some sleep. I don't know, whatever it is. They may move on to something else if they were unable to make their next step, able to make a successful next step. They may have to take a look what got in the way and then help them work with that.
So then part of session 3, just as in session 2, now on page 18, is to have them fill this out, the
That's
next steps for the upcoming week. As it says here, for use between sessions in 3 and 4. Once they fill it out, then they can use this to guide their next steps. It's not uncommon at this point in the program, as Holly's alluded to in many of the tutorials up to now, about the whole nature in which all the areas are interconnected, and that's one of the learnings. For the team to notice, to make a change in the area. So up there it says on the top of page 18, area of the compass you want to focus on this week, meaning that they could choose a different area of the compass to focus on. So let's say a teen is working, the stress that they identified early in the program was that they want to work on grades, that they want to raise their grades in general or a particular grade in a particular class. And so they've been doing some things to work on that. But then maybe what they realize is that what they needed to, in order to get make some traction on that, they have to actually switch to the organization area of the compass, and they need to start organizing their time as well as their homework and
maybe spend less
their
time
schedule.
on their video games.
Maybe less time on those video games we were talking about. They needed to get better at managing time and managing assignments, and so the organization they may switch to a different area, and so. That is
it's very natural and normal, and we want them to recognize that, because very rarely is it just one area they are all interconnected, and we want them to see that.
Right. Just a reminder though, we do ask and highly recommend that teens work on just one area at a time. So that they choose an area that they will focus on for that week, as opposed to trying to work on 3 areas all in the same time. They're related. In the same week, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. They can change areas as they go through, but then because it's better to help them have success and get traction in one area, and then naturally. But as we said, if it's connected in another area, then they can switch that area.
Right.
So it's really kind of fun now because they've kind of internalized the process now, and I've had participants say, I can't wait to come back next week and find out did Monica have that conversation, with her boyfriend? Did so and so talk to their parent or talk to their principal? Or did so and so,
And you can imagine that a sense of one of the things we talked about was that wellness is in community, and so just normalizing some of these things rather than teens walking through the halls of their school thinking they're the only ones. It just helps reduce stress. Just that alone, knowing that other people are dealing with these same sort of things.
So now it's time to bring the session to a close, and as we've said in the previous sessions, this is a little bit of a flex time. You'll see here in the facilitator guide we have 10 minutes for journaling and for closing. Again, that is very flexible. If you are going to do some kind of journaling, it's nice to tie it to the lesson, something around the comfort zone, growth zone, and panic zone, and then some kind of creative closing. Again, just really end it on a positive note. And remind them that they're halfway through the process now, and you'll be in touch with them during the week, and look forward to your next meeting. And we just want to say thank you again for giving your time. As you go through this process, you have committed to moving into a growth zone to learn how to facilitate these teen wellness circles. And as you do them more often, it will become a comfort zone for you. So thank you for being on the journey that you're also inviting your teens to go on as well. So that's the tutorial for how to facilitate session 3 of a teen wellness circle. And we'll just have a closing summary here, as we usually do, with our little whiteboard video to review some of the key concepts.